Welcome back. I'm here today with Noosheen Hashemi. Welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
So Noosheen, it's really an honor to have you with us today, but for the listeners, can you give us your background of your pathway in life and what brought you up to where you are today?
I was born in Iran and immigrated to the U.S. in 1977 and went to high school and graduated from Gunn High School in Palo Alto and went off to college. And right after college, I started working at a semiconductor company briefly before going to Oracle, where I worked for 10 years. After Oracle, after a brief break after Oracle, I went to a .com, a successful Sequoia-backed, profitable .com, which was eventually sold. But I left to have my kids in 97 and 99, and then took a different path to the social world and philanthropic world. But that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, good. Well, you're doing quite a bit today, and I want to step a little bit back. That 1991. Okay, Oracle awarded you with the Against All Odds Award for your role in the company's financial turnaround. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah, Oracle was an incredible growth story. When I joined the company, it had just finished a $23 million year. And we went on, actually a $26 million year, and we went on to double our revenues every year, all the way to $1 billion. And so we were constantly testing the growth. The growth was constantly testing the organization, essentially how much we could push this train. We joke that Oracle was a running train that it wouldn't stop for you to get on or off. You just sort of hopped on and did your piece. And a big part of this was the infrastructure to the foundation underlying this fast growth. At some point, we decided we would grow even faster if we decentralized this infrastructure. And unfortunately, as it turned out, some of the checks and balances that had been designed did not get implemented. As a result, we had some hiccups. And so I was called back in to basically re-centralize everything, reorganize the foundation, correct the mistakes, and build a solid foundation, rebuild a solid foundation for going forward. And so I got the award because they were such competing goals in the company. You wanted the fastest growth you could possibly have, but you also wanted to have the greatest customer satisfaction, the greatest sales productivity, and the greatest organizational efficiency. So all of these were at odds with each other, and that's a role that I played in making, at the end, everything work.
When you were working through these issues, and it's every entrepreneur, as companies grow and scale, you're constantly modifying. Did you find that for yourself personally, was it more intuitive, the direction, or how did you come to?
Absolutely. The moment I landed, I was 22 years old, and soon I went from the bottom of the organization from an individual contributor to a manager, then I was a director, then I was a vice president. I already needed to have 2 assistants by the time I was 24 years old because I was doing so many things. At some point, I was running 12 departments, from sales training to, the entire sales infrastructure of the Oracle Salesforce. I ran all the finance administration for Oracle US. It was intuition. It was some very basic things, which is always serve in the best interest of the company above all else. So the loyalties were always to Oracle, not to any one person. It was always in service of efficiency and constant, continuous process improvement. It was always to be ethical, proper, and then you add a lot of hard work. And Oracle was a very hardworking company. You couldn't find a conference room at 9 o'clock at night. I worked 18-hour days every day for 7 years. And I had a 3-day honeymoon, and I pulled all-nighters all the time. I would work till 5 in the morning, go home and change, and be back for a meeting at 8. It was just how it was. So, it was a lot of intuition. You just knew what you had to do. And it was beautiful because they trusted young people to do things. They would just say, go hire 200 salespeople. And when we decided to go, for example, to schools to hire, so you just had to figure it out. No one sat you down and said, I suggest you go to these schools. You basically figure it out. If I'm hiring for Oracle and I have to hire that many people that fast, so I'm going to look for technically apt colleges to start with, and I'm going to look for the so it was a very it was a great place, because you really, as the company tested its limits, each individual was testing theirs.
Noosheen, it's about time for our break, but when we get back, I'd like to talk about your foundation, your philanthropic causes. I'm visiting today with Noosheen Hashemi, and we'll be right back after these messages. Since you can't take your wealth with you, spend time with your family. Welcome back. I've been visiting today with Noosheen Hashemi, and the first segment we're talking about your successful career at Oracle and your award in 91, basically crediting you for a tremendous amount of input, turning the company around and launching it on its way. But how long did you stay with Oracle, and then what prompted you to move on to something else?
I stayed for 10 years, and after the first 7 years when I was in U.S. finance, I did go to the Stanford Business School for 1 year in the Sloan program, and got a master's in management. Went back to Oracle. I was gone for just 9 months. I went back to Oracle and continued working more in the field this time. I was running education marketing worldwide. So I ended up having more of an international position. When my 10 years was coming up, I thought about John Gardner's comment that you should move on after 7 to 10 years, no matter how well you're doing. I thought, wow, I don't want to be a lifer. 10 years is a long time. I've learned a lot here, and it's time to see what's out there. And so I left, and for a year, I traveled around the world. Now, remember, my time at Oracle was, my first 7 years was extremely intense. I just mentioned to you my hours. I had actually not been outside except to go in between buildings 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When I showed up at Stanford Business School, I only wore suits. I only wore suits even to the company picnic. So I had a very intense career life. So it was really an opportunity for me to pause and think about what I wanted to do. So it was early days of .com. So I joined a Sequoia-backed company that was making. Essentially bringing financial services, personal investing online to the world. So instead of going to Schwab to execute your trades, you could execute your own, or you had access to. In fact, when you went to Schwab or E-Trade to execute it, to get financial information, you were really getting it from quote.com. We were the ones providing, OEMing, if you will, providing that information to those websites. So it was really exciting, those early days of personal finance happening. So I went to that company, and then I decided to have kids, and that's sort of what came next.
So when you stepped out, you began a family, and I imagine that you still have that driving entrepreneur inside you, though.
Your DNA never changes. I'm still as hardworking, as driven as I've always been. I just decided to dedicate the last 18 years of raising my family. My daughter's 18 and a half. My son is 16. And she's off to college. And so about 2.5 years ago, I began heading back to the corporate world and working with with entrepreneurs to scale their companies. And I get a huge kick out of that. It's really, really fun because, there are thousands and thousands of decisions that face entrepreneurs every day. And they have to get most of those right. Obviously, they have to get the big strategy right, but there are lots of other decisions every day about hiring people and setting goals and communicating goals. So it's hugely gratifying when you can save them from one of those, one of those bad mistakes, a bad hire, or just understanding where they're going and where they want to go. It's hugely satisfying to apply your experience to these other companies.
I'm visiting here today with Noosheen Hashemi, and I need to take another break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan. Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Noosheen Hashemi, and a real entrepreneur. It's been really fun hearing about the successful career at Oracle, then stepping out to help a Sequoia-backed venture, Quote.com, and then there was a part of your life that you stepped out and began to do some philanthropy, social entrepreneurship. So, what is what prompted you in that area?
Yes. So I had when in 2003, when it was my son was 4 and I was thinking about going back to work, I had a decision to make. And it so happened that for my 40th birthday, I went to a celebration of Sergeant Shriver's life. And there's a video shown at that event where he says he had to make a decision whether he wanted to make more people rich, or he wanted to do for those who couldn't do for themselves. And I thought the universe was speaking to me, and I was living a comfortable life, and my husband was very, very successful, and I had lived an amazing career life myself. And I thought, this is the time to give back to others. And that's really what you do in Silicon Valley. Everyone's involved in philanthropy in some way. Some people do it full-time, some people do it part-time, but everyone does it. It's very much part of our culture. So I really considered it a great privilege to be able to dedicate all my time and resources and my intensity, my research, everything that I can offer the world in a social setting. And so there began my journey of first writing checks and going to conferences and reading syllabuses. Just like anything else I do, I usually research it very, very thoroughly. So I tried to really learn what it was all about. And I looked at global philanthropy, I looked at local philanthropy, strategic philanthropy, what that all meant. I was incredibly inspired by the people who had come before, and the things that especially diasporas, immigrants that had come before and they had become established diasporas, like a Jewish diaspora. They are the golden standard of philanthropy in the world, and I was incredibly inspired by that. So I felt that, yes, this is what one does when one can, or everyone can do something, and I should be able to do a lot. So I jumped in, and like I said, I started with writing checks, and I became more interested in what people were doing, and I had to. I started with sort of textbook philanthropy, textbook strategic philanthropy. You need to know your wheelhouse. You need to know what you're doing. You need to be focused on those things. But over the last 15, 16 years, I've developed a lot of shades of gray. I do a lot of random acts of kindness that I never mention anonymously. It's not very strategic because you're not signaling to the market, but I love doing it. I get a huge kick out of it. And so I began there, and I brought my entire sort of business experience to my philanthropy. And of course, there are limitations to business operating in the social sector or in government, as we know. So I had to learn a lot of lessons. Things don't happen as quickly. You can't eliminate child abuse, for example. And I also went around the world. I took my children to 103 countries and learned that, basically wherever you are and whatever you're trying to change, you're going to butt against the human condition, essentially. Once you see the whole planet over and over, and you realize it really helped me rethink the time frame for the social changes I expected in people, whether it was my Iranian American community and what I could expect of them in what time frame, whether it was child abuse I wanted to change, whether it was the educational system in the U.S. or whatever else I was working on.
So the HAND Foundation, what does HAND stand for?
Okay, HAND is an acronym. It's basically the two last names of myself and my husband and the two first names of our children. So Hashemi, Ari, my son, Nazem, my husband's last name, and then Dena, my daughter's name. Our goal was for them to continue after we are gone, even though our foundation is not a very large foundation. It's a very effective foundation in that we do a lot of hands-on capacity building in nonprofits. And we're hoping that our kids will continue that tradition, that they will get involved, they will partner with nonprofits, they will be of service, not only financially, but also with their hands and with their hearts, with their voice, and they can spread the gospel, they can help organizations in the way we have tried.
Now, in philanthropy, you found that after a number of years of doing this, the entrepreneur was emerging within you. And at what point you're starting to move back into helping to launch companies today?
Yes, I absolutely love philanthropy. It will always be big part of my life. I talked about the joy of even random acts of kindness, which are anonymous and not necessarily very long term, although I do feel that they make a long term impact on people. Yes, I felt like the adrenaline was, I want that back. I want that speed and that sort of madness. Gives me great joy. And especially when I go into these companies and they have deadlines and they have things to do and they are puzzled and they're not sure to go this way or hire this VP of sales or have this kind of a comp plan and so after sort of starting, so I decided first just to jump in. So I started just advising companies and going in hands-on operationally to help entrepreneurs. And then, I started investing in the companies. And now I'm thinking, if I'm going to work this way, I might as well just start, go deeper and deeper. So I could see my engagement rising over time, and I could see working more hands-on with maybe 2 or 3 companies, or maybe even jumping into one company.
How do you decide which companies to get involved with?
Well, in the beginning, I started with all the, I mentioned to one friend that I'm interested in going back, and all of a sudden I had 12 different things that people wanted me to do. So in the beginning, I just sort of jumped in based on the technology that I was interested in. So it was the product that interested me. But quickly I decided that all the quality people I had known in my life, I was sort of taking that for granted, and not everyone's a quality entrepreneur. So I quickly tried to learn sort of that it all comes down to the founders first. So now before I even look at the product, I first, well, obviously we all look for the market, the size of the market. We always look at the product, the timing, but entrepreneurs, the DNA of the founders or the founder. Well, first of all, I don't invest in a company unless there's a technical co-founder. So they're at least, I don't invest in any companies with a single founder. So founders, I think their DNA is incredibly important. It permeates the culture of the organization for years to come. So it's really important if they are open-minded, if they are driven people, what are their motivations for starting a company? Are they just not trying to go into the corporate grind? They're trying to have no boss, or are these people really trying to solve something? They're obsessive about a product, that they read their market well. And so I look for people that are plain smart strategically, like they understand their market and they understand what product they are creating and what problem they're solving. But more importantly, I look for emotional intelligence. I'm looking for people that are open, that want to learn, want to hear, and want to deal with difficult issues that are so necessary in building a company. If you're a fast growth company over a dozen years, you're going to have to change your team 3 or 4 times. Some people just don't have the stomach for hiring, upgrading people around them to do that much, human assessment and change. So I look for people who are not just smart and strategic about their product, but they also have they are up for the human endeavor that building companies is, and not everyone is up for that. So you need to be good, just plain good and confident and smart, but also you need to be up for the human side, which most people, that's where they make most of their mistakes. They can't tell their co-founder they're not going to be a good CTO 5 years from start, if that turns out to be the case, or they can't, tell someone that, let's say they're running remote engineering, they can't really tell people like, you need to travel more so that we can stay in community. There are all these little things that people miss, and most of them have to do with dealing with people.
Where do you see the world heading right now in terms of the entrepreneur and technologies? If you're looking 5 years down the road, do you see some clear trends that you say as an entrepreneur you'd want to get involved with these trends?
You're specifically asking about tech trends, that kind of thing. I would like to step back and actually say that overall, I think that federal governments of the world can't really provide everything that people of the world need. They can't provide all the jobs that we need. They can't grow economies at the rate that we need. So I see global entrepreneurship as an extremely positive movement that's really happening all over the world, not just in Silicon Valley, obviously, but it's happening in Rwanda, and it's happening in Southeast Asia. It's happening a lot of places. And I think that's extremely positive. I think some of these truly genius ideas are obviously happening in the United States. A lot of them are around biotech. I am most excited about the changes that biotech will make in the world. It will change the world dramatically in terms of the amount of suffering people go through and the amount of time they miss from work. And I think those are some of the most exciting changes are going to be in biomedical technology. So that excites me very much. But I think there's going to be innovations across the board. I think there are going to be innovations in the way governments are run. I think it's going to be pressure on governments to be more transparent. So there's going to be business process innovation. There's going to be just pure technical innovations. There's going to be technical innovations that allow other technical innovations to be built on top of them. So I feel like it's all good news. If you really look at a lot of these young companies, these ideas that are coming about, it is very exciting. It's going to be a dramatically different world. But of course, we worry about the transition from some of the old kinds of jobs to new kinds of jobs. That's why I'm a huge believer in computer science education in schools. I think it's as important as teaching people math and English, because we are a knowledge economy. We are the innovators of the world, and we are at least the jump starters. We are the instigators. We are the people who we are the inquiring minds because of our educational system, because of our strong liberal arts system. We are the ones that think out of the box. We test and we try, and so we need to have more of our education to be focused on tools where they can build new things that the world needs. So I'm really hoping that happens.
We've been visiting here today with Noosheen Hashemi, and it's been a real pleasure having you. Out of all the entrepreneurs I've done, which is over 500 on the show, you really stand out, and I can see why you've had the success that you have.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
We'll be right back after these messages.
He's the world's most trustworthy man. Tax filing deadlines are scheduled around his vacation calendar. The IRS agent who audited his client apologized.
I don't always advise people on their taxes, but when I do, I save them every penny legally possible.
GROCO CPAs and Advisors.
Come to GROCO and stay wealthy, my friend.
Welcome back. I've held over Noosheen Hashemi for one more segment. We're just talking on the break about the generation of today, and when we're working with today's generation, the message that we like to have. And I asked if she could hold over and share some of the thoughts with me. So when you're looking at the kids today, and you worked very hard in your career to establish yourself, nothing was easy. What message would you have? for this generation?
Well, I think that youth is a great thing. I think it's been said, youth is wasted on the young. You have unbelievable energy as a young person. You learn things instantly. You have so many assets as a young person that I would encourage people to work hard early in their lives. It surprises me when a 22-year-old tells me they want balance in their lives, because I just don't even know what that means. I think I really benefited greatly from working hard early in my life. I enjoyed working hard early in my life. You're constantly trying to see, well, I did that. I wonder if I can do that too. I wonder if I can do that too. And I wonder if I can do that too. And these were not individual endeavors. These were group teams. So they're hugely gratifying when you can make the impossible happen. And so I feel that working early in your life, you have to work 10 to 15. I feel that to be successful, you need to put in at least 10 to 15 years of hard labor. Decide when you want to put in that hard labor. I suggest doing it earlier in life than later in life, because later in life you have other responsibilities. Potentially you have children. Potentially you have you want to give back to your community more. You should be giving to your community more. As an engaged U.S. aware citizen, you should be spending time in your community. You should be participating in civic life, and you have lots of other things that you do. So I feel like sometimes young people might tend to, these days at least, I mean, we used to sleep. We didn't even, I remember when Yahoo came about, my husband was an executive. He was chief technology officer at Yahoo. I think those people slept under their beds, their desks. We didn't even sleep. So my generation, we didn't even sleep. And then at Yahoo, I think they were sleeping under their beds. And now I don't know. People need to have their cappuccinos and their sort of, and that's wonderful. I'm all for quality of life, but I feel like you miss out when you're at your highest mental and physical capacity. How much you can engage with the world is going to. The level that you engage with the world, determines some level of satisfaction you have about the world. And so I feel like you'd be happier, more satisfied. The more you do, the more you give. And I'm just pushing for higher engagement. And this idea that, I see a lot of trends that concern me about work, because I think work is wonderful. Work is delicious. Work is exciting. Work helps you and helps others. And so I'm always going to argue for focus on work earlier in life than later, because it affords you the ultimate luxury, which is freedom. Freedom to think, freedom to learn, freedom to serve.
I love the way that you've lived your life to the fullest, and also that you can outline in looking back and say, I gave it all, and the net result is there were some payoffs. I'm sure that along the way there were some lessons that were learned.
Yes, so many.
But
so many.
But in the end, it's a beautiful message to the generation that, keep moving and keep pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely, and especially when we live in such a privileged society in the United States, when we live free of security concerns on a daily basis, when we have the best higher education system in the world, when we have so much opportunity in this country, I feel that we should do more for ourselves and more for the rest of the world.
Very well said. I've been visiting here today with Noosheen Hashemi, and we've been talking about, she's an angel investor, an entrepreneur, and an absolutely incredible person. I really appreciate you being on today's show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.